Former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick is officially entering the 2020 presidential race. Patrick is now the 18th Democrat in the race. That's not counting former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who's also considering a run. The former governor released a campaign video talking about his Chicago roots. Since leaving office, Patrick worked at the private equity firm Bain Capital, which was co-founded by Republican Utah Senator Mitt Romney. He's also reportedly resigned from that role. Patrick had also been a paid CBS News contributor, but that relationship is ending now that he's entering the race. Earlier, he spoke to CBS This Morning about his bid.
Right now, we have a really talented, really gifted, and a very hardworking and hard-sacrificing field of Democratic candidates. Many of them my personal friends. But we seem to be migrating to, on the one camp, sort of nostalgia. Let's just get rid, if you will, of the incumbent president, and we can go back to doing what we used to do. Or, it's our way, our big idea, or no way. And neither of those, it seems to me, seizes the moment to pull the nation together and bring some humility that, frankly, we have a lot of ideas, but no one candidate, no one party has a corner on all the best ideas.
And Caitlin Huey-Burns and Michael Graham join me now. Caitlin is CBSN's political reporter. Michael is a CBSN political contributor and a conservative columnist for the Boston Herald. Welcome, Caitlin and Michael. Michael, of all the governors to have been in this race, Patrick is the only one who had a Democratic legislative majority for all 8 years he was in office. So what did he get done during that time?
You know, you'd have to dust for fingerprints to find the legislative legacy of Deval Patrick. And that's one of the things that makes it so interesting about his decision to get into this tough race. Governor Patrick, who, by the way, he did his radio show from my studios once a month, Ask the Governor, and I've been with him many, many times. No one would describe him as a fighter. And if the mood of Democrats is to take on Trump and fight Trump, and I think Liz Warren says fight in literally every sentence, that's not the personality he had as the chief executive of the state of Massachusetts. He wasn't able to fight with his fellow Democrats particularly effectively, much less with, people across the aisle. Not that there are any people across the aisle, in Massachusetts.
Right. So, Caitlin, in that earlier clip, we heard Patrick sort of take some jabs at the mindsets of the Warren and the Sanders camp. What can we surmise about the way he's going to run his campaign?
Well, what we're looking for from Deval Patrick is what his theory of the case is, given that he is entering so late in the game. We're only 3 months away from the Iowa caucuses. And given that there are already still so many people in the field, and this is the most diverse field that Democrats have ever had. And so what is the lane that he is trying to occupy? Well, today he says that, kind of hinting at Joe Biden, who has been talking about just returning things to the way they were before Trump. In that interview, he says, that's not going to work. That's not what we want to do. Also hinting at Elizabeth Warren, who he says he is good friends with still, saying that ideas, big, bold ideas, my way or the highway kind of atmosphere isn't going to work either. So where does he kind of position himself? Right. Supporters of his say that he could have the potential to do well in a place like New Hampshire because he comes from a neighboring state. But also Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders do too, and they already have a pretty formidable organization on the ground there. Will he make the next debate? That's also key. We've seen lots of candidates, former governors even, really struggle to make that debate stage, and that has really played a critical role in shaping this field. So where does he see himself in this field? He hasn't really made that point to voters what separates him from others. He does have executive experience, which could be something. It also could be something that he is a new face. We know that voters are pretty happy with the decisions that they have or the choices that they have, but could this be a situation where he might be able to capitalize a little bit maybe on being kind of a new person talked about? The impeachment inquiry, though, makes it very hard for people to break through.
You're right, though. Governors do seem to have had a rough ride this election cycle. Now, Michael, this morning you tweeted out a Google list for journalists covering Deval Patrick today. Walk us through some of these and if we should expect Patrick to be attacked over them by his primary opponents.
Well, the obvious one is Bain Capital. He didn't just go off to get rich after being governor. He got rich with Mitt Romney. I'm so old, I remember when Bain Capital was killing people in the 2012 campaign. But AmeriQuest is more interesting. AmeriQuest was part of the pattern that Deval Patrick had before he got in politics. Remember, he'd never run for office until he ran for governor in Massachusetts. He's only run for office twice, which Caitlin, I think, is actually significant. This is running for office is a weird thing to do. But before that, his pattern was a company would have trouble with an issue that involved the African American or minority community, and they would hire Deval Patrick as to ease, to soothe the waters. Well, AmeriQuest was reportedly treating black borrowers horribly, and I believe the settlement was more than $900 million they had to pay out. And Deval Patrick was brought in to basically protect the corporate executives from the anger of the people they borrowed from. I threw Chardonnay in because Deval Patrick drinks Chardonnay. I'm sorry, you can't drink white wine to be president. I'm sorry, that's a me thing. And
I guess I'll never be president.
And then there's also the story of Justina Pelletier. And I'll just say this. I would urge people to Google it. It's very complicated, but it involved a young woman who had a very rare disease. The state of Massachusetts seized her and kept her unable to receive her health care for more than a year. It was a terrible story, and I predict you'll be hearing a lot more about that because I happen to know the family, and her father, Lou, told me if Patrick runs, he's going to be running, so everyone knows how Patrick's health department treated his daughter. So that's a story for another longer day.
A sad story as well, it sounds like. All right, so Caitlin, I want to ask you about the other potential candidate who is sort of looming in the background, maybe jumping in, maybe not, Michael Bloomberg. What have we been hearing about him lately, and is Deval Patrick sort of stealing some of his thunder?
Well, what we know about Michael Bloomberg is that he hasn't made this decision yet. He hasn't actually entered the race. Deval Patrick entered today. Just today, he was in New Hampshire signing up to be on the primary ballot, which is really important. We have not seen Bloomberg do that. Tomorrow is the deadline for that. So that's why you've seen lots of candidates in New Hampshire over the past several days. So he seems to be, if he gets into this race, waging a multi-state strategy. I think that's very, very difficult, given, again, that there are so many candidates already in this race and where he would fit into this, especially since he's carrying in some big liabilities, not only being a billionaire, but there's a New York Times profile out today kind of recounting all of the really controversial things that he has said in the past about women that have come to light and he's had to respond to. So it's difficult to see at this point where he makes his case if he decides to do this at all.
And Caitlin, can I add to that? Because people forget that he came to New Hampshire in January, gave a politics and egg speech. He campaigned on the ground, and Harry Enton at CNN notes that his polling never moved above 2 or 3% when he was a possible candidate. And something that I think is really significant when you have 2,700 people running. He had the highest negatives among Democrats. 44% of Democrats said if Bloomberg's the nominee, I either absolutely won't vote, I probably won't vote, or I'll vote for someone else or stay home.
Yeah, no, he's clearly been thinking about this for a long time. Where his thinking hinges right now, we just don't know. He seems to be on the precipice, but not quite ready to jump in. All right, well, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Michael Graham, thanks to both of you.
My pleasure. Thank you.